City of Stevens Point Airport Commission meeting, recorded December 13, 2021.
On to the Airport Commission. The attendance will be noted in the next set of minutes. The first item is the approval of last month's minutes.
Just have one small correction. In item number 3, approval of department claims, the motion is made, not.
Oh. Me Nachman.
I don't really care if you misspell my name as long as you put the M in it, but other than that, we make one.
Understood, thank you. Anything else? If not, a motion to approve is in order.
Move to approve with corrections noted.
Second.
All those in favor signify by a sign of aye.
Aye.
Aye. Both same sign, motion carried. Progress on the airport fence. Joel, I assume most of our visitors today are here for that purpose?
Yeah. Do we do approval of claims? Let me see here. Yeah, let's do a
Oh, claims, I overlooked that claims, I'm sorry.
Don't forget them.
short list.
Motion's in order.
Haynes will move approval of the claims.
Second.
All those in favor signify by the sign of aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Now we can go to the airport fence update.
Thank you. And Jason is on remotely. So, what I hoped we could do is just start with where the contract's at right now. And I'll actually stop sharing the screen for a moment so we can see people. Jason, you out there?
Yep.
Go ahead if you would.
Sure. Good afternoon, everyone. Just to give you an update on where we are with the fence project, we've entered phase 1 of the project. Clearing crews from Interstate Tree Clearing Service mobilized on the week of November 22nd. And the clearing commenced on November 29th along Wellfield Road. We're moving, the project director decided to move along Wellfield Road in a northeastern direction, counterclockwise fashion around the airport. And currently the crews are working along the northwest property line, roughly about 65 to 75% complete with the clearing portion. That's the tree processor, forestry processor. The mulching and grinding crews have begun to follow the processor at this time, and they'll be about 50% behind the processor through this first phase. This first phase is slated to wrap up right after the first of the year in preparation for the construction season, which will be phase 2 beginning late March, early April as the weather allows. And that's currently where we're at in the progress of the project.
Thanks, Jason. Some other things, I guess, just as of today. I believe that we heard from our engineers today, based on some conversation we'll get into here. A couple things that we were looking to clarify have to do with some property line versus right-of-way stuff. And though I'd say more than 99% of the time those things are uniquely the same, that is property line and the right-of-way line, right? One runs into the other. I did ask them to confirm that along East Maria. We heard back this morning from them that they are the same line. And just on a scheduling note that Jason was kind of getting into is that the clearing will probably be completed by the end of the week on their current schedule. So I don't know if you want to get into kind of some of the public comment, and then we'll field your questions.
Well,
that.
I've been reading all the emails that have been sent out, as I'm sure the other commissioners have as well. And I thought there might be some value in us getting a map of that area up on the screen. And then whoever feels they have the best ability or two people's ability to go up to that map and give us, a visual effect of what you're trying to get us to accomplish other than what we had agreed to some 6 months or 9 months back. I don't know who that would be. I think Kurt has probably, Man Savage and maybe Joe Claysmith have been the ones who have, issued most of the emails on this project, so
Yeah, and
it's real difficult for me anyway, and I would imagine many others, to try to visualize something without a map.
And that's exactly why we were really hopeful, and the mayor and Carl Rasmussen did come down to the site along East Maria Drive, and they got a visual of it. We walked in the woods, we looked at the spots and everything, and I know that came up last year when we attended the meeting, and some people talked about, well, maybe we should take a walk down there, we're not really familiar with the area, and then it never ended up going that direction. But that was really an important thing to us, because when this was originally brought to the attention of the commission, and we were granted, I think, Ray, you were the one that said, well, who came up with 15 feet, and why can't we just make it 30? And we said, well, okay, 30 sounds good, and we went that direction. Joel, that's when you came down with somebody from the city, and at some point late in December, actually marked a spot on the road and told us, measure from that spot 63 feet to the north. And Town of Hull came down, Dave Wills and a representative of Town of Hull came down. They did the same thing before Joel was out there, because we didn't know the timing of things, and Dave had been working with us and wanted to kind of give us an idea of where this projected fence would sit. The two spots were pretty dang close to each other, what the Town of Hull marked and what Joel marked, and they're actually very close to what is marked today. So again, it's important to remember that that was all when we were talking about 30 feet. That was not after you guys met later on, after we'd gone out there, reviewed the proposed fence spot, and realized this does not give us much of a barrier at all of natural mature trees. It gives us the scrub line, underneath the telephone poles, and maybe a couple trees, that was it. And that's when we went back, Joel came back to you guys and said, hey, we need some leniency because of the irregularities in the right-of-way. And the agreement was, okay, we can do that. We can give you another 15 feet. We marked a new spot off of that last marking, and we all sat back. Dave Wills was there, the residents of East Maria Drive were there, and we were like, okay, this, 15 feet, I was gonna bring my tape measure in, but that's probably about for me to Paul away, or that flag behind him, that's about 15 feet. So that additional buffer of mature natural trees, we got to look at that and say, you know what, there's still a fence there, this is not ideal, but it gives us enough where we're not gonna have to, as residents look at this, the people who walk and bike and pass through that area on a regular basis, it's not gonna be that in your face either. And it seems trivial, that 15 foot seems trivial, but it's actually monumental if you go down there and look at the site, everybody. I just want you to know that. And that's why we were so hopeful that as many of you as possible could do that, to see what we were all talking about. Again, if the fence today, if where it's marked today is where it was told to us where it was gonna be, we would not be in here right now pleading for some additional, measurement on this, for some additional pushback. It was represented that way to us. And I will also say that we were all present in many of those meetings where, and I think it's even in the minutes, where we were told that 15 feet is a normal clearing lane for a project like this, so the maintenance vehicles can get through. But on the East Maria Drive section of it, since East Maria Drive was so close to that fence, and if a tree went down or something else had to be done, it could be accessed right off of East Maria Drive by, popping in anywhere along that route. They wouldn't need to take the entire 15 feet. We could slim that down to 10 feet with the ability to mark some mature trees within that 10-foot section. That's the understanding we had all along. That's when we felt that, this is workable, it's doable, it doesn't give us exactly what we wanted, but it represents the intention of the petitioners and everybody else that we were working for. I don't know that you could actually look at it on this map that you've got up there and drill in granularly enough to see what that means. And if you guys would like to go down there, I would make myself available at any time to kind of walk you through what we're looking at from our houses and what's off the street.
Well, Kurt, do I understand that you said that we had agreed to 45 feet and the markings are at 45 feet?
So if you look at the timeline that we provided to you guys.
No, just yes or no.
Initially, the agreement was 30 feet. That's when Joel marked the spot. That's when it was 30 feet, okay?
Yeah,
Then you agreed to 45.
45 feet, yes?
The spot never moved. Nothing changed with his marking. He came in and showed us 15 feet more from where he initially measured. That's what we were told.
So, if I could clarify,
Yep.
this is kind of the central point of this whole thing. Somewhere, and for the benefit of the people at home watching, I'll try to do this on the screen. This pink line,
Or can you make that granular?
I
or-
can, I think it's gonna turn the photo off. Yeah, I don't know why that is. I guess we don't need the photo.
No.
So let's just do this like this. I don't know why the hand doesn't work, but I gotta zoom kinda old-fashioned way here. So the airport property line, AKA the East Maria, and I'm sorry, north is like this way, right? So this is east, this is west. Just how it sits on the plan.
And EAP is,
That's the airport property line. I can't remember which way they, existing airport property, I think is what it is.
okay,
So that and what is the north right of way of East Maria, same line. The point we keep referring to, and if you look at these two gray lines, they represent the road, the pavement, on the road. So that's the road. So this is the right of way, and this is the 45 feet.
and the
Oh.
road is 32 feet?
The actual dimension of the road, I'm not real sure. A lot of times, two-lane roads are about 22. That one might be wider. Town Hall sometimes paves their shoulders a little more. I don't know. I'm not real sure on that. Got a lot of people that I think got off the call and now are coming on. I'm not sure what's going on here. But anyway, the point that everybody's talking about, and we met on site to talk about, right here, within a couple feet of the edge of the pavement, last year, there was a dot I put in order to have a point of reference to how far back the fence would be. And actually, there was 2 or 3 of them. The one that we've revisited most recently is somewhere.
Is that the center line of the road?
No, it's just on the edge of the pavement because the instruments we use depend on a clear sky to get accurate. So
Okay.
it's out in the open.
Fine.
It's just a dot on the
Can
pavement.
I mention one thing, Joel? Excuse me for a
You can
second.
ask the chair.
Chair, could I just interject once on this point
Sure.
that we're talking about it? So again, and this was in the timeline presented to everybody, an email from Joel after that was marked. Glad you saw the marks before the snow. The marks in the center of the road are what represent the section line and what should be the center of the right-of-way. From there, you can measure 63 feet for the approximate location of the future fence.
This is
How
where.
far is the center line? My question to you, Joel.
I don't actually know, the whole center line matter, because the 63 feet thing is an offset from this fence.
So that was done when we were talking about 30 feet, though. Can you clarify that?
I can't actually say, because here's the thing, if that mark doesn't represent 30 feet off the property line, it represents 45 feet off of the property line. And evidence to that is the fact that when we had our pre-construction meeting and we then communicated to say we need to go out there now, just not further away, not closer, but this way, perpendicular to the whole thing, the surveyor put a mark and I asked her to dimension how far it is to the fence from there. And those points, as far as distance go, were within 0.2 of a foot from each other, and she also put 63 feet.
Agreed.
Yeah, now, I think the thing that everybody's getting caught up on is the fact that there were several iterations of different things we measured out there. The fact that our 63-foot mark, and we did do, several things. When we were out there initially, we did some shooting of some survey monuments down here and one up at the road to see where the section line was. But when we put in the 63-foot reference, and it's entirely possible and probably at this point likely I referred to it wrong. We did it off of, let me see if I can show you. We did it off of these points. So, our engineer gave us via email, the Portage County coordinates associated with this property corner and this property corner. And so that represented what we did to offset, the 45-foot offset off of our property line off of. So if you go 45 feet this way, now we're looking north is up, and you come out to a point where you can reference it on the road, that's the 63 feet offset we have. And the fence, as it's staked right now, is 45 feet off of the property line. It is also 45 feet off of the right-of-way line. Those lines are common. And the marks that we made last year, because of all the ribbon that was out there from the 3 or 4 iterations of our conversations out there, the marks that we made on site were on the ground in white paint. That's where they were. And that doesn't change any of these facts.
Yeah, 100% agree with everything you said. The question I have though, Joel, is when you put your initial mark in place, this is critical to this entire dialogue. It was before there was any discussion with this group about moving it 15 feet further because of the irregularities in the right-of-way. So that was,
You're right, it's because we were talking about getting an extra 15 feet, and we put it out there to say, if we ask for permission to go with an extra 15 feet, here's what it looks like. So you're right, I didn't have permission yet. We had that permission, the 30 feet was in December, and they approved going an extra 15 in January.
So if you went out there right now with a tape measure, which I'm sure you've done, maybe numerous of you, and you measure from the previous, slide, I'll call it, does it measure out to 45 feet
Mm-hmm.
so from the dot on the road,
on the
On the street.
shoulder?
how far is the center line?
So,
It's-
from the spot on this sketch that Joel said was painted on the edge of the road,
Mm-hmm.
Right about here.
right there. So if you put your tape measure there and went up, is it 45 feet?
Yes.
Well, then what are we arguing about?
I believe so. I believe you're pretty close to that. But my point is right here. This is what I'm reading to you again, that Joel wrote to us. Glad you saw the mark in the road. The mark represents the section line and should be the center of the right-of-way. From there, you can measure 63 feet, not 45, okay? So 63 feet from that point, all right, is where we were told initially.
Date of that email.
That, the date of that email, you can look in your timelines, I've got it printed right here, it was December 30th of 2020. So you were out there just before that to mark it, Joel.
Mhm.
And we had seen it, and we said, hey, we saw the spot, you know, we were communicating. And that was before there was any discussion that the 30 feet wasn't gonna be adequate. We had no discussions as a group with any members here, with Joel. We had been given 30 feet, by the commission at that point, and we wanted to see what it looked like.
Yeah.
And that was the first shot at, here's what this 30-foot looks like. Then, after we looked at it and we sat with Dave Wills, with our group, with Joel, we were like, this doesn't do anything, other than get us just beyond that little scrappy line, of brush below the, telephone poles. That's when we went back and Joel came back to you and asked for some additional leniency because the road's not straight and there were irregularities in the right of way. And that's where, later on, he came out and showed us, all right, further back in, this is what it would look like with 15 more feet from the spot that it sits today. That we were comfortable with, that we felt okay. Todd, am I?
Yep, go ahead.
Yeah, oh, thank you. Todd Huspany. The only thing I would add, I agree, and I thank each of you for being part of the process and digging through that. I agree with the facts as stated. I would simply point out, and we didn't point it out in any of the letters, that we were prepared as petitioners to oppose the variance of a 10-foot high fence with 3 feet of barbed wire at the city planning commission meeting and the city actual council meeting, and we relied, hopefully not to our detriment, that in fact, that additional, what we're talking about here, 15 feet, would provide that cover. And we stood down. But there's a reason why you don't have a 10-foot high fence with 3 feet of barbed wire across from a residential neighborhood. And we stood down on that variance, and we did it because we believed that, as it was pointed out there, that would be the mark.
So if we all agree that the 45 feet is designated by the right paint drop spots, and I believe we do, what are you asking us to change?
I don't know that we're in 100%, I think it's 45 feet off your property line, not the center of the right-of-way line.
Joel says they're the same, one and the same.
Not the center line, the north right-of-way of East Maria and our property line are one and the same.
Right.
And it is 45 feet north of that.
But you don't know how long the right-of-way is, you're saying, or how wide it is there?
Well, that is what we've discussed, where the right-of-way is pretty irregular through there, where you get up to this point, up in here where you see this jog,
Yeah.
and this is not a 33-foot jog, it's like a 28.6-foot jog or something weird like that, and it goes to the center line of the road, which I believe to be consistent with the section line. And so that's why the whole thing here is kind of like two things can't be true if they're not the same, right? There's a lot of getting caught up in the dot on the road, and now there's two dots on the road. But like I said, the reality is this: when we came out and staked everything, let me see if I can get both of these showing in the picture at the same time. When we staked, there we go. This point here, where the purple line bends, and this point here, where the purple line bends, are what we used to position this. Last year, this year, when we're talking whatever, when we're talking 30 feet, when we're talking 45 feet. The point out here, that's at 62 feet, 62, whatever it is, 62.
Right in front of my house, it says 63.
63 feet.
Yes.
Is a measurement to get to the point that is 45 feet past our property line. And that's, I don't believe, being disputed. It is accurate. We've measured it by hand. We've measured it with our instrument. The surveyor on the project put it there also. But with an irregular right-of-way there, I don't know that there's a lot that's super relevant to where's the center of the road. You tell me. I mean, is it the section line? Is it the right-of-way divided in half? You're in part of a platted subdivision. You can see that here with these CSM number and these lot numbers, and it gets weird here. I'm not sure if this is a constant right-of-way or not, being 30 or 33 feet on either side of the center line. It makes sense in these cases that the section line is the center line, but it isn't represented that way anywhere very clearly. The closest we get on some of this is at this dashed line here, because it's no longer representing our property line, because the property line goes this way. I'm assuming that he's representing this dashed line as the right-of-way line, because it makes sense, because they're the same line. So if I had put that mark down there to say that this dot, this white dot on the pavement at 63 feet represents 30 feet off of the property line, that would have been wrong by 15 feet, because it's not. It's 45 feet from the property line where it's staked right now. And I don't know why randomly I would have been like, here's 30 feet from the property line, when it's exactly 15 feet different than that. It's 45 feet.
Yeah.
It was then, it is now.
Right, and that's the question we have, because that was the initial mark before any discussion happened about
Right.
going beyond 30 feet. And no other marks had been put on the road after that discussion, Joel, other than showing us a distance 15 feet further into the wood line and allowing us more of a buffer. And that's what we're asking for. You know, the goal is to get a small strip of 15 more feet of trees that are gonna provide a natural buffer, rather than taking this entire strip of woods down, or leaving just a couple, and then trying to put in seedlings or whatever you can transplant, and waiting for 10 years for some obscurity to grow into place.
So that's the request, there's 15 additional feet.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Why didn't you say that from the beginning?
Sorry,
That's
can we have 15
Let's
additional
Request
feet?
15 additional feet, please.
Yeah.
Of woods.
Because that's what we feel is represented to us in the field. And we-
I can't hear you, ma'am, I'm sorry.
Because that's what we feel is represented to us in the field. when we wrote the timeline initially, and it was for our purposes to understand what happened all along and why that visual difference is so big to us. And it really came down to that, is we truly feel like we were shown that in the field, that where you currently have it marked is only what we were told was 30 feet.
So there were people, I mean, you guys are out there, I was out there. We had Jason out there, one of the guys in our office running the equipment. And the reason for the white paint on the ground was all the ribbon hanging in the trees at that time. The reason we put the paint on is because the ribbon misrepresented what we were doing at that time. We didn't start surveying this whole thing until we got the permission that was out there, and then we started looking at, okay, maybe this isn't quite enough, right? And we agreed with you, right? And so the fact of the matter is, with me on one end of that tape and one of you on the other, we measured out 63 feet to look at what do we want to get done. The white marks on the ground are at 45 feet from the property line. They were then, they are now. That hasn't been misrepresented. It may be remembered improperly, but that's how it was. That's just how it was. Now, I know that you wanted these marks up to say, here was this one, and here was this one, and this is that version, and now we have another version, and here's the old version, but we'd prefer this version, regardless of all that. That's why I had to paint it on the ground and something totally different, because I said, this is where we're at now. You on one end of the tape, me on the other.
So can I ask a question? I'm a little bit, I mean, I get that people are confused about where the measurement is coming from, but my understanding is that the fence is set back from the airport property line by 45 feet, and that's what we agreed to and voted on. And now everyone is asking it to be 60 feet from the property line? Is that correct?
That's my understanding, Anna, yes.
Well, so, I mean, this is pretty far along here. So Joel, could you speak to that?
I can. Like I said earlier on, while we were just kind of going through the update, the clearing will be done this week for the whole project, the entire perimeter of the airport. It's kind of a weird balance of authority on these projects, as people have kind of discovered as we go through them. As the sponsor, we have a lot of influence and participation in design and project, but the contractor is actually working for the state here, not for us. They bid the project, they award the project, they manage the project. We're just the local sponsor, or grantee, as they refer to it, if you're talking in terms of real estate. So that is relevant here, the project timeline. I think that there's a lot of other things to consider here too, and that is that there's a bit of a misunderstanding on what this means maybe long-term anyway. I mean, if we put 100 feet from the road to the fence, which we're not proposing, that doesn't mean that it's still not airport property to manage. And it doesn't mean that we couldn't at any time cut that anyway. And honestly, I think that there's some of that to consider. The fact that the horizon that we look on this, like we do everything kind of city-related, needs to be a little more considerate of that timeline to say, well, there's a lot of things that could help here and a lot of things that are entirely irrelevant. Nobody's going to give anybody notice from WPS when they come through and clear under their power lines to keep those free of obstruction, nor do they have to, because they have that right. So there's a lot of uncontrollable things here, not only right now, but in the future, that just lead to the fact that I think that 45 feet of room between the edge of the right-of-way and our fence is beyond adequate to have a long-term impactful buffer between the fence and the residents. Now, to that end, we don't have nearly that in some parts of this project where it is in people's backyards. That's why I'm not in favor, and I'm not going to suggest or ask for the commission's support to go any further. We'd be running into some wildly inequitable decision-making here, and we can't undo it because the clearing's done. So that's where I stand on it.
Put that previous slide back up there. If I'm remembering this correctly, theoretically, the fence could be on the airport property line.
On the purple line, yeah,
And where's that?
right here. Which it is on
Right.
other roads.
So the fence could be right there.
That's where it was proposed originally, yeah.
Yeah.
Then, without any suggestions from neighbors, the staff came in and recommended 15-foot. Right?
Yeah, there was some movement there.
So that would be approximately where?
Well, it'd be a third of this distance. There maybe. It'd be a third of the distance between the purple and the orange.
Okay. And then, as a result of, the meeting that we had in November, was it, where people came in and asked us
December.
for it to go to,
30.
whatever, it was a rather long discussion. We talked about 30, and at that same meeting, we compromised at 45. So where would 30 and 45 be?
Well, so in the December meeting, at the request of staff and neighbors, you gave us permission to move to this point here, which would be about 30 feet.
Yep.
We went out there and we actually kind of all agreed that, okay, maybe a little more is appropriate. It's hard to push that far, but our comfort level on asking for that room ended at 45, and that orange line is at 45.
So at this point, the staff and the city have made 3 concessions to what could be happening by property line definition.
Yeah.
Correct.
So now and I heard what you said, and I agree with what you said about, not considering an additional 15 feet. But if we did, that would move to approximately where?
Well, I guess it'd be another third, right? So
Right there.
another, maybe there, yeah.
Now, I assume that those, edgy things are supposed to represent trees?
Yeah.
Or
Yeah.
I don't see any trees there.
Significant tree, no, this is all wooded here. The trees are not out here, and this gets a little thin here. This is
Okay.
more brushy
All right.
than anything, yeah.
Well, if he would zoom out, the trees repopulate then.
Yeah.
And can I ask, when you talk about it could be on the property line, how would you maintain the fence in front of it without having your clearing in front of it? Would it
Cause
be on-
we can use the right of way.
I just wanted everybody to remember that we have made 3 concessions already through this whole timeframe.
I gotta unmute. You can hear us now?
We got you now.
All right. Phone must have dropped off. Apologize for that. How long?
Paul was just, reiterating the different, concessions that were made, and then it dropped off.
Okay, thank you.
Anna, are you still on the line?
I am,
Okay,
and May is
So
on the
did-
line too.
yeah. Did you have something else that you wanted to follow up on your initial statement?
No, I just,
Okay. So, as I see it, the real question that you as commissioners have to decide is whether you want to entertain the option of extending the setback, whatever the right word is, from 45 feet to 60 feet. And I've already expressed my opinion that I'm not comfortable with doing that, and Joel has said the same thing. Do any of you feel to the contrary?
My original intent for suggesting more space between the right of way and the fence was to preserve trees. And if there's a way to do that without moving the fence further by simply not clearing as much, I would be for that. That would be my suggestion. I don't think any trees that don't need to be taken down. And I don't think that I know the contract is between the state contractor. Contractor's not gonna object if they don't have to take as many trees out. It's less work for them for the contract price. That's my approach. And I agree, Paul. We've been reasonable all the way through the process and what we could.
Joel, is there a reason those larger trees, can't be saved?
No, in fact, I think that one of the finer points here might be identifying the difference between what some people consider significant and what some people consider insignificant
Well, that could be a
in the
real
way of trees. Yeah, it's
real
pretty,
messy topic.
it's a, yeah. Jason, can you, because I was off last week at the end of the week, so I haven't been out there. Can you speak to what's marked out there? 'Cause I,
Sure. I had the opportunity to walk that section of the fence, and the clearing limits currently indicated as 15 feet towards the right of way, rather than the standard 20 that we're doing elsewhere. Within that area, there are mature northern pin oaks that are in various states of health, some very healthy, some not as healthy. I'm a very novice forester, so I'm not gonna go any further than that. There's a few larger white pines, and the rest is a lot of immature or stunted growth within the limits of the fence, the clearing limits that we're proposing. The current clearing limits at 15 feet do preserve the largest section, or should I say almost row of northern pin oak through that southernmost section of East Maria. And we can definitely guide the clearing contractor to use those hard limits and not veer outside and to prevent any damage to those trees. However, as Joel will attest to, on site, clearing the full limits as much as we can, and even extending them to the original 20-foot planned limits on this fence project would provide for better room for future plantings and or more of a screening vegetation rather than the mature trees. I guess that's what I can allude to. There's probably a half a dozen trees that I had the ability to mark and say for surely that they would not affect the fence, and were desirable trees to keep. Again, that's muddy water. What's undesirable to some is the perfect tree to others. So I'm not here to interpret that, just what the contractor would likely want to see for their construction.
so there's maybe half a dozen with flagging ribbon on them, is what you said?
Currently,
And then it's just a matter of not having marked some that are significant because they're outside the limits of the clearing as they're currently staked.
right.
Okay.
And they're clearing 15 feet from the 45-foot setback?
Correct.
Okay,
And with the exception of those trees that get marked inside of that 15 feet to try to work around. And that's another thing, is that if you see the size of that equipment and the way he grabs trees and lays them down as a whole thing, I mean, this is kind of a, we'll try, you know. I don't know how much, he's worked around some really delicate stuff, so I've been pretty impressed so far, but yeah.
As with any forestry clearing, there's a little collateral damage to be expected, but we can stress those areas.
Well, go ahead.
Yeah, I had 2 points that came up in the discussion that I'm hearing. Winding that back to our December and January discussions, as we moved that line progressively more to the north, there was also a concern that was expressed about FAA expectations of the entire scope of the airport properties. And as we view this line, moving it further and further north starts to trigger a response from them, which required much more significant response and input on their part, and deliberations and expectations of wondering what the heck is going on in Stevens Point. And then the second thing I was responding with Ray saying that, you know, trying to protect the most amount of trees. Protecting the most amount of trees means putting the fence on the property line, which, what I'm hearing
Then the trees would be on the other side of the fence?
That's correct.
But that's protecting the most trees.
That would protect the most trees. And I don't think that's a solution either,
I don't,
for the folks that are looking out the front yard.
I don't either.
I would
We
mention.
moved it another 15 feet, we're gonna be cutting a whole lot more trees in volume, from what I saw out there.
Behind the fence to the north.
Oh, there's a significant amount. You know, it's unfortunate we aren't able to, pull up the aerial.
Isn't this also about
That we
the?
had initially,
the
because,
community who
I'm
lives
sorry,
around-
will somebody mute?
I think he's wanting to be recognized.
If I could offer one thought,
Speaking,
We'll recognize him in a second.
and there's.
Go ahead, Carl.
So, based on those 2 points, I think the progressive response that we had did not trigger, a review by FAA, and I'm not prepared to put them on the property line. And I think the 45-foot from our current property line will provide that ability to screen in the future. They're objecting to 10 years, or there's concerns that 10 years is too long a time to wait for, landscaping to have an effect, but, you know, there's plenty of trees that will grow. If you wanna put popple in the interim and then put, additional species that'll follow them right behind,
Yeah.
you know, it'll be screened. You won't notice it. The fence is going to be black,
That's another concession that actually wasn't mentioned.
and those black fences disappear. The barbed wire, yes,
They're also
but,
expensive.
you know, if WPS was to put out a power line at this point, we'd be hearing the same thing. It won't be on, before the commission, but it would be.
Mr. Radford, you've been trying to interject here for quite some time. You wanna go ahead?
yeah, I apologize if I wasn't following decorum. Yeah, again, my apologies for that. But I guess I would just point out, this isn't necessarily, in my opinion, about protecting trees necessarily, but, you know, the beauty of the neighborhood and what these people who have been residents in this neighborhood for a long time have to look out their windows and stare at, which is a fence that, to me, from what the description that I'm hearing, resembles something that would, you know, surround a penitentiary or something similar. I mean, it's a large, imposing fence topped with barbed wire, where, you know, we currently have a beautiful view of a somewhat untouched forest at the moment.
Well, your point is accurate, but don't forget, we're not the ones who decided what kind of fence has to be put there. It's the federal government, the FAA, not us. It's all about homeland security. And also, you should all remember that we are the last airport in the state of Wisconsin
Well, of our size, you know, we're.
of our size.
We're one of the
Yeah.
last, yeah, it was slow.
Yes, sir.
If I could just follow up, Carl, I super appreciate you mentioning the plantings, because we, in our discussions with Joel, we're willing to understand and explore what is the city willing to do also to abate this. And repeatedly, we asked, is there a possible plan? Is there a commitment, at least, to somehow provide some sort of planting? And we asked for that, or at least, and I guess I'm asking here, for the commission, is there support for also, you know, putting some sort of planting in there to help screen this fence? I yield.
I think we agreed to that when we agreed to the 45-foot setback.
I don't believe I ever saw that
Oh,
in
yes.
any writing anywhere, sir.
I'm sure we did.
If I may.
Sure.
The important thing there, that you weren't there for the last on-site meeting, was the discussion of the fact that there's two things going on there. one, we are still working through the process with the Bureau on whether or not it's worth trying to incorporate some of those expenses into the project. That isn't something that this group can answer for you, and it's not something that I can answer for you. What I said on site is the same as I'll say now, is that you have a commitment from me to work through it, and it's not gonna make any sense to work through it till it's cleared and the fence is up. Because it's gonna look wildly different, and it's not gonna make sense in your head now versus what would make sense then. So that's still all that I've ever said, and it's all that I'm gonna say now, because I can't commit to anything else, nor can anybody in this room.
I acknowledge that. The professional forester that we had out there said categorically, there's absolutely no reason you can't have a planting plan before things have been cut. So I get that your funding sources, I totally get it. But just hearing the commitment, thank you, Chair, the commitment is here to see that that's gonna be done at some point.
Is that something that we can talk to the Bureau about?
We are.
We are.
We are. In fact, we did this morning on another phone call, ask where the progress is at. And it's a matter of this or that, right? It may go through the full federal arm, it may just stay at the state level, or we may decide because of a bit of red tape associated with any time you do that, that it's better to keep it local. So I don't know where it'll end up yet.
But our intent is to screen that fence, are able.
I think our intent is to recognize what needs to be done when it's up, when everything's in place, and do something reasonable,
Yeah.
right? I mean, I do think that there's a better than 50-50 chance that everybody in this room is gonna wish we had cleared it all after this project's done, and then plant something that actually does screen it, because we're gonna have less room, to do anything real useful when we tighten up our cutting corridor. And those scrubby little oaks and everything that are in there will grow taller and spindlier, and you'll be looking through reeds. You know, it'll be like you're looking through grass, not looking at bushes. But that's why our last on-site meeting concluded in, let us know. Do you want the 15-foot corridor with us saving some of the more significant stuff, or do you want 20 feet clear so that we can have a decent planting corridor? Because that would give us a little more. Yeah, so we're doing 15 and saving some, and we'll see what we can do after the fact.
Part of why we came back and asked for the city forester. Jason will say, he's a mountain forester, we're not claiming to be anything but.
And
So we would like to have the plan in some sense to say what is the best, because for us to have to make that decision without knowing the plan is quite near impossible.
well, and it's not one or the other. I mean, it's there's going to be a clearing and there's going to be a fence that goes up. That we know. My point is that because we know that's going to happen, it's not going to stop if somebody doesn't like the planting plan. It's going to happen. It makes a whole lot more sense to look at what you're dealing with before you start planning. Somebody want to put a plan together, go ahead. But from my perspective, we'll see the stuff that we mark. What does it add to the project? The stuff that's there growing now, what areas seem like they're screened enough? The fact that the fence is black anyway. I mean, I'm sorry, but I really think like it's a waste of time and resources to do that now instead of after it's built. I feel it's a waste of our time, because if we're gonna do it anyway, why do version 1, cut the woods down, put up the fence, and then go, oh, that looks different than we expected, here's version 2.
But as a plan, I'm saying, is there an informed person that can, promises going out? You know, is there an informed person that can help decide what is cleared and that's what we lack.
We also lack any idea of, okay, are we talking about 2-foot seedlings, or that may take, 15 years to reach any mature height and fill in, or are we talking about some larger type trees that get put in there to do something substantial on the front end? Because again, I point this out, I think it's really important for everybody to know that we were content last year. We took our signs down, we stopped the petition, we didn't keep plugging away because we were confident that we had at least 15 to 20 feet of mature trees that were gonna buffer this fence, not just a little scrubby row of trees, like Joe, and he's absolutely right. If that's all we're left with now, that we're gonna have this, you know, this small little strip of potential woods, and then it's gonna limit our ability to plant, that's gonna be, you know, unfortunate. We were under the impression we had a nice swath of mature trees, there'd be some undergrowth coming up in between there, it would obscure things, we wouldn't need to talk about future plantings. That was gonna be, we felt it was a victory all around for everybody. And again, we're talking about a trivial amount of feet here, we're not talking about large things. In fact, I know, Joel, you brought it up a couple times that, well, the city could have just sold lots here, you know, and to be honest, I wish they would have now, if this is where it ends, because I much rather would have had a lot across from me with that person being able to plant what they wanted to obscure that fence. The people on the other side of the highway where this comes along their property line, closer than ours, they can do that. That's why they're probably not, you know, as concerned. I can go out there and plant whatever I want if it's right there on my property. It gives me much greater ability to do that. I don't have that same ability to do that from where I sit, nor do the people that, like I said, all the petitioners who walk that stretch of the road and come down there and bike and walk dogs. There were so many people that signed that petition who just frequent that area on a regular basis. It's a beautiful little gem back there, and it's gonna, like Zach mentioned, it's gonna look like a prison now. We're gonna be walking along there, and you're gonna feel like, what the heck?
Well, the process as it stands right now is that if our commission takes no action, everything will stay as it was before. So I guess the question becomes, does anybody on the commission have an appetite for changing it from what it is now and has been agreed to, in the past? Or would they rather leave it the way that it is? Keep in mind, you gotta have a majority of the commissioners to agree to any change. And even after that, if a change would occur, it still has to be approved by the city council.
Let's go to the plan commission as well, Paul.
I don't know about that, Joel would know the mechanics of that.
No, it'd be here in council, but the cutting is not again, they're not working for us.
So what you're saying is they're gonna cut it regardless of what discussions we have in this room?
I'm saying that we have a little latitude with doing things like marking a couple more trees out there, being a little more clear about our intent, because I don't think that what we believe is gonna happen is maybe very well represented to what they think we marked. I think there's some significant stuff outside the marking limits that we didn't mark because it's outside the cutting limits. We can clear that kind of thing up, mark a couple more trees, that type of thing. But we can have a little latitude with where things are, but we can't stop the project because it's not ours to stop. So whatever action takes here really would be a little bit fruitless to depend on council coming around because the cutting's gonna be done by them.
Gentleman in back row.
My name's Jim Radford, 404 Virginia Drive. I've lived there 32 years, right down the street from the airport. And I think you might remember when the airport was built, there was a pledge to be a good neighbor. The FAA, I believe, would say that they are very impressed with the people here at Stevens Point. Take this matter so seriously as they have these debates about not only the efficacy of the airport, which we've all supported as neighbors over the years, through many loud noises, lights flickering at all times during the day and the weekend, paratroopers landing near my house, plane crash not far from my house. And I think we've had a lot of concessions over the years. The fact that we're asking for basically what sounds to me like about another 15 feet. As we all know from the Great Wall of China, when a fence goes up, it usually does not come down. That's going to be there a really long time. First of all, I'd like to thank the commission for your thoughtful deliberation. I really, really would. But as a deliberative body, that's your job, is to discuss and debate. And we welcome, especially in our country these days, the opportunity to have a dialogue and a discourse about a matter that obviously we feel very, very passionate about. So I want to thank you very much. But I wanted to just sum up by saying, basically, as I understand it, we're asking for another 15 feet to be added to this property line. Thank you.
Okay, I don't think there's much more that needs to be said. Is there any appetite from any of the commissioners to, make a motion? Joel, if, as you just said, staff would go out and somehow or another identify the trees that are within the right-of-way or within the property that we're talking about, and who would do that and who would, from the neighborhood, would be doing it with them. But see, part of the problem with that, and we should do it, but part of the problem with that is, what I think is a beautiful tree, somebody else said this earlier, somebody else is gonna say, oh, no, I don't want that one, I want that one, and now we've got, 20 people with 20 different opinions. Go ahead.
I think the operative definition for us is what provides a blockage. So yes, other considerations of how long will that tree live, how long will other things, absolutely. But we want the viewscape as much preserved as it currently is. So that's the operating definition. I yield.
So who would be out there? You and?
Jason and I, from staff perspective, are the ones who spent time out there. And what we do is, do that and let, the on-site project manager know what we've done, and then make sure that they have a conversation with the guy running the big equipment to say, here's what needs to be avoided if possible. And it's really that simple. Now, I think there is some maybe difference in what we could mark that we already think isn't getting cut, to put some comfort in the minds of those that said you didn't mark much. Well, if there's a half a dozen trees out there, okay, there's probably the significant ones. If there's a few here and there that it might not be obvious they're outside the clearing limits and they're gonna get saved, we can mark them, it doesn't do any harm, Yep.
Or an informed person that we could have as part of, like if it was a representative forester that we felt comfortable with that could speak for all of us versus us.
With all due respect, young lady, the problem is time.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we spent a lot of time talking about something we have really no control over. Who are you gonna contact? You know how the federal government works. Takes years to get things done.
With the other,
I think she was asking for a forester, which we have several at UWSP. That's what we're
Yeah,
asking for.
like we could provide a person that could be out there
To walk without us, but to walk with Joel and Jason.
Within,
Yes,
We did it
yes,
in 2 days.
absolutely.
days, they're gonna be done cutting this week.
I'm cutting this week.
Yeah, so I think that the important thing to realize there is that this isn't necessarily about somebody who knows more about trees than anybody here. This is about the fact that we need to construct a fence.
Well,
That's about it.
right, and things can be halted, Joel. Nothing's been cut yet. This could be halted. It might not be the most convenient approach to this, but it would be the best resolution in my opinion, until it's done. This was kind of dropped on us, with short notice, the change in the line here from our perspective of where it was moved. And again, I come back to the group here and say, had this been told to us last year when the marking was done, that this is what you're gonna be left with, pretty sure you would have heard from us back then. Not the impression any of us were given. So regardless of what we all think this was or that was, we would have been talking to you much earlier than this. And again, there would be no need to get out there and specifically mark all these individual trees if 15 more feet were allowed. Then the barrier's there, the buffer's there. Beyond that, if you wanted to save some, great. If you didn't, it wouldn't make as big of a difference.
Okay, at this point in time, is there anybody on the commission that, has an appetite for making a motion of any sort or kind? If not, we're on to the written and verbal report. Thank you for all being here.
Thank you.
Jason, is there anything that you need to specify in your report? Must be off.
Uh-oh. Lose him again?
He's muted.
There.
Sorry about that, it muted back on me. I won't take up any more of the commission's time today. The month of November was fairly standard month. We're on to snow clearing operations, and my thanks, and airport staff thanks to the construction and engineering department of the utilities for helping us out.
All right. I guess a motion to adjourn is in order.
Before we adjourn, I'd just like to make one more comment. If the contract with the contractor had been a local contract, I would have made the motion to the additional setback. I think at this point, all we can do is be advisory. Joel has already offered our staff to do that with the contractor. I think that and I move to adjourn.
All those in favor signify by the sign of aye.
Aye.
Aye. Both same sign.
Aye.
Motion carried. Thanks for your attendance.
A video of this meeting is available for viewing on the city's website, stevenspoint.com/videos.